Welcome back to Open Line, talking about questions surrounding the Tennessee Department of Correction. The death of an inmate in West Tennessee is among those questions, but a lot of issues have been raised in legislative hearings that have happened of late. Another legislative hearing going to happen tomorrow. Dave Boucher from the Tennessean, investigative reporter, is here, has done a lot of great reporting on it. Let's go back to the phones. Hello, Wayne. Wayne, are you there?
Yes.
Hi, what's on your mind?
Well, you know, I hear you guys talking, and I watch it on TV all the time about you guys asking the state for some paperwork or something like that. And they just say no, and it's nothing you guys can do, I guess. They're hiding a lot of stuff from people and getting by with it. They privatize a lot of stuff, like I'm fixing to order, my son's in prison, and I'm fixing to order him a package, and I had to call California.
Yeah.
Order him a package. If I want to put $20 on his books so he can buy commissary, it cost me $7. I had to call Florida.
So they're private entities that are making money off that.
Oh, well, somebody in the state's getting a big kickback too. If I wanted for him to make phone calls, I'm a poor guy, so I put $5 on his phone account so he can make 5 phone calls. It cost me $10.95 plus $5.
Yeah.
So somebody's getting fat off of this, but the state hides this. My son's been in there a long time. I mean, he's seen guys actually gutted at Turning Center. No report on the news. He's seen a warden drunk bring his guards down and rough up inmates and send them to maximum security in West Tennessee because he was trying to find out information on another inmate, and then that warden went to that prison and got beat up. Mr. Lester.
All right, let's talk about this. As a reporter, he's saying there's a lot that we don't know about. He also said you ask for information, they don't give it to you, and that's it. How tough has it been to get information?
You know, it depends on the questions. And to the department's credit, I've asked a lot of questions. And so on any given day, I am emailing or calling the department multiple times. On some of these issues, I've heard back within a couple hours. On others, I think case in point, there have been, and we talked about this, issues about whether a violent act involving an inmate and an officer is classified as an assault, or whether it's classified as this thing called a staff inmate provocation. And I had heard that due to a difference or change in how the state would enforce this, there had been a drastic increase in the number of staff inmate provocations while the number of assaults have gone down. So I requested information from the state using a Freedom of Information Act request to find out the number of these staff inmate provocations versus assaults per prison over 5 years. I asked about it in early August. They told me that it would take a month to get me back the information. Meanwhile, we write more stories, and but there are more issues coming up, and there's a legislative hearing. And when they go in to talk to some of these lawmakers in a hearing, before that date when they said they could have that information available to me, they had, not only did they have that information, they had it for going back further and presented in a PowerPoint for lawmakers. Now, perhaps they're giving a lawmaker's request a little bit more credence or fast-tracking it more than my own, but clearly they had that information. They were able to compile that information, and they decided that when I asked for it, it would take a month, but when lawmakers asked to have a hearing, it took considerably less time. Again, they respond to many of my requests. We dispute some of the answers and some of the information that they provide, but they do respond typically in a timely manner to many of my requests.
The notion that they can't go into detail. This is a dead inmate, yeah, and they're saying we can't release his medical records for his privacy?
They argue that that is part of, again, this Federal Privacy Act, HIPAA, that just because an inmate has died, that their rights about their health information has not gone away. And to a certain extent, from what I can tell, and again, I'm not a legal expert or a lawyer, that's correct. However, a family member, especially the next in kin, or the person who has the power of attorney for that person's estate, whether or not they're an inmate, can have a right to those medical records, if for no other reason than to find out what was wrong with them, to see if it's hereditary, to see if they have those same health issues.
In that case, they're saying, well, maybe he had seizures, and maybe you know, I guess they're trying to explain some of these issues, that he had broken ribs and blunt force trauma. They're saying he had seizures and a long history of medical problems, but we just can't release it. If it would exonerate them, if it would answer some of these questions, it would be in their interest to release it.
You would imagine that, and you would think that, and they're trying to argue, you know, we wish that we could, and that's, I think, why they've hinted at some of these things that are going on. However, I think it's worth noting that the medical examiner who did the autopsy did have access, apparently, to at least some degree of this inmate's health records. They noted in this autopsy, this public report that I have, a litany of health issues that this inmate had suffered from, and the medications that he was taking, and they still couldn't determine if this was the manner of death, and determine that the cause of death was multiple blunt and thermal traumatic injuries. So I think it's worth noting that clearly some medical examiner had a health history for this inmate and determined that he didn't have a heart attack, that he didn't die from some of the, I guess, more common, quote-unquote, natural causes of death.
All right, let's go back to the phones. Ella, hello?
Yeah, Bella. Hey, I've got like 4 quick comments.
All right.
The first one I'd like to address is reporting incidences of crime or whatever. The local police department doesn't report everything. I went to a neighborhood meeting with a local cop, and I was told I could go up to him and find out about what's going on in our neighborhood. He said the only thing that's happened in your neighborhood is one domestic abuse. Well, we had car burglaries, home burglaries, on, but that's the only crime we had. So, you know, I can see them doing that in prison, too. The whole name of the game is covering it up for statistics to get the money because somebody's going to turn a profit on it. You need to look good on paper. Okay, my second comment is about the HIPAA Act. I was a big proponent of having the HIPAA Act come in, but to me, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. If you're in a nursing home or if you're in a prison, if you've been put in a nursing home as a ward of the state and they've taken away your rights, you can't even, if your guardian wants you to not be resuscitated, you cannot challenge that order. You have forfeited the right to your medical records. And on Channel 5, you have a retirement report, and an attorney comes on there on a regular basis, and he has told people, get your will in order, your living will in order, because you can't even get into your own children's medical records if they're over 18. You can't even get into your own spouse's medical records, even though you're married to them. And the thing about HIPAA, this is what strikes me as funny. We've got a reporter sitting here. I'm a taxpayer. I'm paying money. I'm looking towards the press to find out where my taxpayers' dollars are going. And all of a sudden now, in the past 20 years, a dead person has more privacy rights than a living person.
Okay, now, all right, and we'll address that. You have one other comment?
Yeah, I have one comment about privatization. I worked for a government contractor on a federal basis, and we were a unique contract. I replaced 5 government workers. And the way it worked is that you turn your blind eye to stuff. And if we got sued, we could get sued, that's fine, because in the end, the taxpayers paid our lawsuits. And we had another contractor, another major contractor. It was so ridiculous. We told the government how it was going to be, that Congress had to have an emergency session and fly a tiger team out in the middle of the night to catch them at what they were doing. That's all I want to say.
All right. What do you think about some of what she was saying there?
So I think that she's right. There's a general confusion about HIPAA laws, not only in the public, but with, admittedly, the media and with people who are supposed to be experts about what HIPAA is. And I think that the clearest example I have of that, in addition to this, is earlier this year, Tennessean and other media outlets tried to find out how much money the state of Tennessee was spending on the health care for lawmakers in Tennessee. And this came up after the debate and after lawmakers decided to vote down a proposal called Insure Tennessee, similar to Medicaid expansion. And lawmakers argued that releasing the cost of their health care program would be a violation of HIPAA. Now, the Attorney General, among many other legal experts that the Tennessean cited, said no, that's not the case. So clearly these are the people who Tennesseans elect to write the law in Tennessee, arguing that this federal law applied to them when it didn't. So clearly there are issues with understanding how far HIPAA reaches and what it actually means for accessing information.
Certainly people want to use it to their own advantage sometimes. I mean, I don't know that can be an argued point. There are times that people want to expand it so that information doesn't have to be given out, and that may be a perfect example. Let's go to Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
Hey, I just wanted to get a little clarity on an issue. It's my understanding the governor works on his budget all year long, and the departments submit information. But earlier we heard that it was up to the lawmakers to decide what the pay raises would be. So I just wanted to see who said that it was up to the lawmakers, and can we just talk about that for a minute? And just
Sure. I think the governor proposes lawmakers could change it, but what is
Sure, that's exactly right. The governor sets his priorities not only for policy, but for where money is going to go, and that comes from the department heads, the commissioner of the prison system and other departments heads, but it's up to lawmakers to sign off on that. And on any given budget item, lawmakers can simply say no. For example, obviously the state of Tennessee, through the administration, was preparing to, in its budget, enact Insure Tennessee. Again, this massive healthcare program, and it simply didn't pass. And so that was something that needed to be worked out with certain budgetary aspects. So you're right, the governor sets the budget that he would like based off of what his administration is telling him and the priorities that he would like to set. But ultimately, it comes down to state lawmakers to approve and sign off on that budget.
So this has been in the media a lot, okay? Department of Correction, problems, issues, concerns, questions, all these things. There have been a lot of media stories from several outlets about what's going on over there. How would you characterize the governor's support of the commissioner there at the Department of Correction and just the way things are going at the Department of Correction?
Sure. I think that right from the beginning, the governor has essentially characterized media reports as overstating the amount of violence and the type of attacks that are happening within prisons. Especially early on, he continued to cite data provided by the state of Tennessee that, to their argument, showed that assaults were going down. Now, we haven't heard that same argument come out after the department has acknowledged that while the number of assaults have been cut in half since 2008, the number of these staff inmate provocations have tripled, which seems to indicate that, although, again, assaults are going down, the number of incidents are roughly the same, if not more. We've also heard that he's defended the commissioner. He's said, as has the commissioner, that prisons can be an inherently dangerous place and that it's hard to stop or prevent every act of violence. And so that's been another point of criticism. And then again, the third point is that he's argued, as has the commissioner, that there are other facets within the economy that are driving these vacancies, like other manufacturing jobs or just generally the economy getting better, as opposed to issues with the scheduling that are driving away some of these officers.
For the most part, he's supporting the status quo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, though, it's worth noting that in speaking with the lieutenant governor today, he told us that you can't just bury your head in the sand. He's also said that when there's this much smoke, there must be fire. And he said that in recent conversations with the governor, that the governor has seemed to change his viewpoint in what regard, we're not sure, but is in some way indicating that maybe it's time to look at some of these issues. And again, that's coming from the lieutenant governor. That's not something that I've personally heard from him in my interactions. Obviously, you'd hope he's more candid with the lieutenant governor than with me.
All right, we're going to take a break. Beverly and others, hold on the line, and we'll get to your call right after we come back. We'll take a break. If you want to call, there's the number, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.